What's going on, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we're back with another fight breakdown. Canelo Alvarez is going to be facing Edgar Berlanga this weekend, 8 p.m. Eastern, on Amazon Prime pay-per-view. Okay, I think this is for like $90 or something like that. Something's crazy. $90 for this fight is crazy, but it is what it is. All right. This fight is going to be for 3 out of the 4 major titles at that super middleweight. This is not an undisputed fight because Canelo had to vacate the IBF strap for not facing one of his mandatories. And I believe Edgar Berlanga is his mandatory for the WBA. So I think the WBA, WBC, and WBO is going to be on the line for this fight. All right. All right. I should be here to cover it live this Saturday. I should be here this Saturday for this one and next Saturday for the Anthony Joshua fight as well. All right. So I spent a lot of time doing film study for this, more time than I wanted to. All right. I mean, I'm like everybody else. When I heard this fight was announced, I was expecting this fight. I told you guys back in 2022 that Canelo would be facing Edgar Berlanga. I knew that they were going to go with the Mexico versus Puerto Rican thing. You know, I just felt like Berlanga coming off of the 16 knockouts. And even though he struggled in this last, he went through a streak of fights where he struggled a little bit right after stopped getting the knockouts. I still felt that he would be an opponent, you know. I seen him with a lot of celebrities on social media. I see him, you know, Fat Joe's always with him. I seen him with Snoop. I seen him with Floyd. I seen him with all of these celebrities when he was going on that long KO streak. But even after the KO streak and when people felt like he started to get exposed, I think the buzz was big enough to make the fight, you know. I'm normally biased towards New York fighters, you know. I'm a big fan of New York fighters, you know, anyway, you know, just because just the New York bias is there. And as much as, you know, hey, listen, if Edgar can pull off the win, that would be great. But realistically, and I'm always going to be fair, I thoroughly went through Canelo's resume this morning just to make sure that I was right on where I was going with this. But Edgar Berlanga is probably the least experienced fighter that Canelo has fought since Canelo has been an elite fighter. And I'm talking before like the Floyd Mayweather fight. Every fighter that Canelo fought before this fight, the opponent had fought at least 1 or 2 top contenders to at least, even if they weren't champions yet, they at least proven to, you know, like they had a reason to be there. You know what I mean? They had fought a lot of good fighters, or at least a few good fighters prior to fighting Canelo, you know, top contenders in the division. You know, so I know a lot of people thought that Canelo has cherry picked in the past and most recently hasn't fought the very best. You know, Jaime Munguia, can the Triple G at the stage that Triple G was in the third fight. Jamel Charlo coming up a couple divisions. All of those guys still had a lot of experience. Even John Ryder. John Ryder has been in there with so many different fighters over the years. And I even went to like, you know, like what's his name? Rocky Fielding. Even Rocky Fielding had experience in fighting, you know, a few guys before getting to Canelo. You know, so Edgar Berlanga, if you remove the 16 straight KOs, there's not much there. And when you look at the level of the fighters that he's fought and those 16 wins in the first round that he knocked out, they weren't good. You know, and I'm not just talking about resume. I'm just like, look at them. They weren't really that good. Once he started fighting decent fighters, that's when the knockouts stopped. All right. So for this to happen, again, I know there's buzz with Edgar, you know what I mean? But outside of that, there's not, and him being Puerto Rican, there's not really much there. But listen, if the PBC is willing to make these kind of fights while they have the deal with the 3-fight deal or whatever with Canelo, It is what it is. You know, I mean, it's on them. They made this fight. They made a Jaime Munguia fight, and they made a Jamel Charlo fight. You know, and it is what it is at this point. You know, I already made content and shared my thoughts on this fight. But as far as experience, Edgar Berlanga is probably the least experienced fighter that Canelo's fought in a very, very long time. All right. So I did a lot of film study, and I went back and watched some of the early knockouts of Edgar Berlanga. Mostly, I think I watched most of the Jaime Munguia fight with Canelo. But I've been on here for over 10 years, and I've been doing covering fights for Canelo for years. I know how he fights. And I've been good on picking his fights in the past, but I went back and I watched the Patrick McRory fight that Edgar recently had, and I also went back and watched the Caceres fight, some of the Damon Nicholson fight, and the Angulo fight, which are more recent fights past the 16 knockout streak that Berlanga had. And what I was basically looking for is that now that Berlanga is going the distance, I'm looking for strengths to see where, certain things that I believe that can give Canelo problems. And to be honest, I didn't find any. I have to be honest with you guys. I really didn't find anything that stood out with Edgar Berlanga compared to everybody else that Canelo has faced. There was nothing that stood out. I think the only difference, the only signs of growth that I've seen is comparing Berlanga in his fights against Caceres. Now, Caceres was a tough fight, and I was familiar with him because I remember when Billy Joe Saunders fought him in one of his earlier fights at 168. And Billy Joe was actually losing the fight. Like, this guy boxed pretty good. I think Billy Joe, under pressure, pushed towards the end of the fight and got a knockout, which won him the fight, obviously. But Caceres boxed very, very good against Billy Joe, who I think is a very, very good boxer, right? So in that fight there, Edgar struggled. He got knocked down. He lost a few. I think he lost the second half of the fight. But he still did enough to win the fight because he cleared, I think, the first 6 rounds or so, in that fight. But anyway, Caceres was a tough fighter, and Caceres, it was just, I think the problem with Berlanga is that the amount of right hands he caught from Caceres, who was not a big puncher, definitely stood out. Because I'm like, all right, Canelo, we know Canelo got a big right hand. You know what I mean? And not just that he has a big right hand, but the speed, the timing, the precision. You know what I mean? The counter puncher. Canelo's a counter. He's a pressure fighter, but counter punching pressure fighter. He's not high volume. So that stood out to me in the Caceres fight. I'll even watch the Angulo fight. And then another thing that I noticed about Berlanga, and I know this video is going to sound like I'm trashing Berlanga, but I'm not trying to. I'm just being real. Berlanga mentally doesn't seem like he's stable. Because I've seen these fights where, when Caceres drop him, he's beating on his chest and make it seem like he's not hurt, where he was hurt. He got caught with a big right hand that dropped him hard, right? But he got up and continued and won the fight. Cool. But when I look at the Angulo fight and the amount of headbutts and the biting that he did, that he was suspended for, he tried to bit Angulo's ear, out of frustration. And it was not like nothing was happening and that was that serious for him to do that. But even in the McRory fight, his last fight, which I think he looked the best in since the knockout wins, he threw an elbow that I was like, yo, I'm watching a fight and I'm not even sure if the ref really caught it. But he threw an elbow in a fight and I'm like, bro, you gotta relax. And what I think and what I personally believe, since the 16 knockout winning streak, right? First round knockout winning streak that he had. I think what happened is when the fights got tougher, I think he just got frustrated that he just couldn't get the knockout as quickly as he wanted to, you know? I think that it was a standard that he created for himself and that his fans and supporters and the people behind him probably created for him. And when he, I think when people started talking trash, like can he box, and then these videos of old sparring sessions or when he got dropped or knocked out, like started coming up. Like I think a lot of people was doing their best to try to expose him, and I think once the fights got tougher, he I think, excuse the noise, I think things got frustrating for him, and you see it in the fights, and doing headbutts and elbows and biting and all of that stuff just makes me feel like there's a chance he might fold under pressure, and even all the tough talking and stuff, that's good for selling the fight. But when he's in there with Canelo, it's different. It's different. Canelo has said it. He says it with every fight, it's different. Like a lot of guys say this and that, but it's different from when you're actually in there with him. And, from a mental standpoint, I'm not even sure if he could hold up. Now, Edgar is pretty explosive. He does have power. He has a good size. He is a good size at 168. I mean, everybody's going to be taller and naturally bigger guys than Canelo. I think Canelo, if he really wanted to, he could still probably fight at 160. But being at 168, Canelo is going to be smaller than everybody. And but Canelo is one of the most durable fighters in all of the sport. He's just extremely durable. I mean, he's been buzzed a couple times. Triple G did buzz him, but you gotta really go back to when he fought Jose Miguel Cotto. Was the last time he was badly hurt in a fight. And he's fought some punchers. I mean, big punchers. He's fought pressure fighters. He's fought all of these guys. So when I say Edgar Berlanga, I think from what I've seen, in the Angulo fight, the Caceros fight, Edgar, explosive at times, big puncher, not that accurate though. He has a decent jab. He likes to step in with the jab, but he has one type of jab. He doesn't stab to the body that much. He steps in and throws his jab. Doesn't double the jab that much. Doesn't change the speed. Doesn't really probe. Doesn't really feint that much. You know what I mean? He doesn't really change levels that much. He just throws it. He just steps in and throws it. And then when you look at those other fights, it became kind of predictable because you know exactly what kind of jab he's throwing. He's looking to set up the right hand. There's not many angles there. But when I looked at his most recent fight with McGrory, I thought he improved. Okay. I thought he was lighter on his feet. Like in his earlier fights, I thought he was pretty slow on his feet, like pretty flat-footed. Even defensively, getting in and out and the danger. I didn't see any of that. It's just always, like his feet was always cemented to the ground. But when I saw him in a McGrory fight, I saw improvements. I saw improvements on the jab. I saw him feinting a little bit more. The speed on his jab is improved. The speed on his right hands, the right cross has improved. Even had a little bit, I've seen a little bit of pull counters in there. I've seen him being light on his feet, getting in and out a little bit. So I've seen improvements in the McGrory fight, which is his most recent fight, which is good. Going into this fight, if he was coming straight off the Angulo or the Caceres fight that went the distance against Canelo, I honestly would think that fight would stop within like a few rounds, if that, But I've seen better movement. I've seen more hand speed. I think he's improved. But again, when I say experience and lack of experience, McGrory is not cutting it. Jason Quigley is not cutting it. Quigley was a couple fights ago. This is a guy like Demetrius Andre stopped in a couple rounds. You know what I mean? Steve Rolls, good fighter. Triple G, even the older version was able to get him out of there whenever he wanted to. These guys are just not it. Damon Nicholson, another guy that is a good fighter. He's solid, but these are not the fights that make me know that he's ready. It's too much of a jump to go to Canelo. He didn't fight. He didn't fight like a John Ryder. I can't even say he's fought a John. He hasn't fought a John Ryder. John Ryder before the Canelo and Munguia fights is better than everybody he's faced. You know what I mean? By far. See, if he at least had fought and beat like a John Ryder or you know what I mean, like I don't know, Diego Pacheco, someone to make me know like, okay, this is what he can do at a higher level, then I can give you a better analysis. But there's really no one there. You know what I mean? There's no one that stands out on his resume at all. And then the fact that he struggled in a few of these fights here, it doesn't. When you stepped up, you didn't dominate. And I believe that a lot of fighters, most fighters, when they step up, you're going to see the best version. Like, I believe going into the fight, we're going to see the best version of Edgar Berlanga. But what is the best version of him? Like, this is to one of the best fighters in the world, one of the best fighters in this generation. Where are we going with? What do we got? And the only reason why I rewatch some of the Jaime Munguia fight with Canelo is just to compare Munguia to Edgar Berlanga, who I think Munguia had much more to bring to the table than Edgar Berlanga do, because I said Edgar is explosive, but Munguia is much more explosive, and he's much more proven and experienced. It's a guy, 3 divisions. I think they're roughly around the same age. 3 divisions, that he's fought in. I think he's a champ. I think he was a champ at 154. But Munguia's been in there with decent guys. Even like a Sergey Deverenchenko, I think is better than anyone. Even at this, Christian Mbili just fought him. At least the Derenchenko is still better than the rest of these guys that he's fought, in my opinion. And Munguia does everything better than Edgar Berlanga. I mean, Munguia defensively is not great, but at least he has a volume. He has great cardio, great volume. You know what I mean? He's improved too. He's improved his jab. I think Munguia, watching him fight Canelo and even struggling against a Deverenchenko and stuff, I still think he does everything better than Edgar Berlanga. I think he's better than Berlanga. I think Diego Pacheco might be better than Berlanga. You know what I mean? Right now. I think he's better than him right now. I think Christian Mbili might be better. I'm not even going towards the Benavides or the Plants or, like what's the other guy that just moved up to 175, the Cuban fighter. Damn, I can't think of his name right now. It'll come to me, but yeah, I just don't feel like I don't see it. I don't see it, and I think it's just a jump too soon. I understand the jump. I understand the opportunity. If you get the opportunity to fight Canelo on pay-per-view, you know what I mean, for a Mexican Independence Day, you're a Puerto Rican fighter, I get it. Take it. Get it done. You never know. I mean, Canelo, the one thing I will say about Canelo is that I do believe Canelo is slowing down. But him slowing down, he's still very, very good, and it's not like Canelo is all athleticism. You know what I mean? He's skilled. The way he counters, the way he places his punches, he seems to do it at the right time, and he doesn't have to have high volume. We know that Canelo gasses. We know that, but when we say Canelo gasses, there's only elite fighters can take opportunity and take advantage of that. And that's Dmitry Bivol, that's Triple G. You know what I mean? Like, Yeah, he gasses, but elite level fighters was able to take advantage of that. Really, you know what I mean? Not the lower guys. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, John Ryder did come back strong in the second half of that fight. But even John Ryder, again, it took experience for him to be able to get off the canvas and come back and win some rounds against Canelo. No, Triple G in the third fight, as old as he was able to come back and win some rounds against a gas Canelo because he was durable enough to do it. I don't even know if Berlanga is durable. I don't even know. I mean, I know I've seen Caceres, a guy that's not a puncher, knock him down. And I think if someone with more power would have were able to land some of those shots, he might have knocked out Berlanga. You know, but they didn't put him in there with anyone to test him because there probably was a risk of him losing prior to getting into the Canelo fight. You know what I mean? So, and I was talking about Dave Morrell earlier. My bad. Dave Morrell is who I was talking about. Dave Morrell. I'm not even talking about him, Benavidez, Morrell, Plant, and Munguia. I'm just I'll take it down a notch. I'll bring it down to the John Ryders of the world, the Renchenkos of the world. You know what I mean? He didn't even fight that level yet. So I think it's really about when Canelo wants to stop and what is Canelo going to do. You know, I personally think that Berlanga, whether he makes it a firefight early, it's gonna be bad because I think he'll burn himself out and he'll risk getting clipped in the meantime. But he'll risk burning himself out and getting gas because he's not a high volume guy. You know, he's a boxer puncher, but not that good of a boxer puncher. And a guy that is not that good defensively. So what do you go? Do you turn it into a firefight? Do you try to knock out Canelo? Do you try to hurt Canelo? What do you do? Because you can get caught in the mix of trying to go at him. Or do you draw it out? Do you box? Do you move? But then you got to worry about the pressure of Canelo. Because if you're moving, there's guys that moved. You got to remember, Canelo's been in there with guys like Jamel Charlo, Arislani Lara. Like, he's been in there with Caleb Plant. Defensive fighters that moved better defensively, that moved much better, were much lighter on their feet than Berlanga. So even if you take that route, Canelo's still going to get to you. So what do you do? I honestly feel, and I'm going to end this with this. I think the two options, Canelo anywhere between rounds 4 and 6 or 7 to 9. You know, Canelo's saying around 8. You know, I think the 7 and 9 is the perfect place. You know, Canelo hasn't been knocking everybody out lately. You know, I mean, he went the distance with Munguia. He went the distance with Jamel. You know, Ryder. He went the distance with, you know, Triple G and the trilogy. He went the distance with him. So Canelo hasn't had a stoppage since Caleb Plant, and that was very, very late in the fight. He stopped Billy Joe Saunders too. Again, I think that Canelo has slipped a little bit since those fights, since that run. I think he slipped a little bit since the Bivol fight. So I'm thinking 7 to 9 is the best way to go. Again, it really depends on what Canelo wants to do. You know, if he wants to press Berlanga early and get a stoppage early, he can do that. You know, I think the risk of that is that if Berlanga survives early, Canelo might slow down late. But with the experience Canelo has, I think he can do what he wants to do. And I think there will be a stoppage here. And I'm leaning more in around 7 to 9 stoppage. That's probably where I'm gonna put my money on. Around 7 to 9. I think if not that, I would probably go to 4 to 6 early. I just don't see it going to the championship rounds. You know, I don't see it going that way. Yeah, I think Canelo can get him out of there. All right. And you know, don't be surprised if this ends up being a Josue Vargas Zepeda situation. You know, if you guys seen that fight, you guys know what I'm talking about. You know, Jose did a lot of talking, a lot of barking before the fight, a lot of antics, and it ended up getting destroyed in the first round. All right, embarrassing. Had his family crying on TV and all that. It was embarrassing. I'm not saying it's gonna be that quick, but it might be bad. It's that much of a mismatch, in my opinion, as far as talent. All right. Maybe I'm underestimating Edgar, you know, a little bit, but again, I just don't see anything in his bag that I think could be a problem for Canelo. You know, even if he is aggressive, Canelo's gonna just be blocking, you know, walking forward, you know, and even if he chooses to box and move, I don't think he has the skills in order to get away and deal with the pressure and the counterpunch of Canelo. All right, Canelo's gonna do things that he's never seen before, and it's just levels. It's just levels. All right. Anyway, that is my breakdown. I said it would be quick. They're never quick. I'm always lying to you guys. I'll see you guys Saturday. All right. Y'all have a good day. Subscribe to the channel, smash the like button, share the video. Peace.